In the dimly lit back rooms of Prohibition-era America, where whiskey was poured in secret and fortunes were made in shadows, one name would rise above the chaos of gangsters and guns. Meyer Lansky. He was not the most feared with a pistol, nor the most charismatic at a rally. But behind the curtain of organized crime, Lansky was the mind that stitched empires together. "I'm not a gangster," he once said. "I'm a businessman." Yet history remembers him as the architect of the modern American mob. He was born Meyer Lansky in 1902, in the small town of Grodno, then part of the Russian Empire. His family, like so many Jewish immigrants, fled pogroms and poverty, arriving in New York's Lower East Side in 1911. The streets of the neighborhood were unforgiving, tenements stacked high with families, alleyways swarming with kids hustling for coins, and crime an ever-present language of survival. Amidst this, Lansky found his closest ally, a boy named Benjamin Siegel, later known to history as Bugsy. Together, the two would climb from street dice games to the highest ranks of American organized crime. As a teenager, Lansky's genius became apparent not in violence, but in numbers. He was a gifted mathematician, quick with calculations, and sharper still in his understanding of human psychology. Where others saw chance, Lansky saw patterns. He built small gambling operations, running them with an honesty rare for the underworld. "The house doesn't cheat," he often said. "The odds do the work." It was this principle that would define his empire. The Roaring Twenties brought opportunity. The Volstead Act of 1920 turned alcohol into contraband, and with it the underworld into an empire-building machine, while Al Capone dominated Chicago through brute force. Lansky quietly maneuvered in New York, with Bugsy Siegel and another rising figure. Charles "Lucky" Luciano Lansky became part of a generation that would reshape crime itself. No longer just street gangs fighting for corners. They envisioned something bigger: organized crime as a corporation. In 1931, after years of bloody wars between Italian and Jewish gangs, the world of the mob changed forever. Luciano, advised closely by Lansky, eliminated the old guard of mafia bosses and formed the Commission, a national board of directors for organized crime. At its core was efficiency, structure, and cooperation across ethnic lines. This was Lansky's genius. He recognized that profit could overcome prejudice, and in a country fractured by race and religion, the mob would become one of the first multi-ethnic syndicates of power. But Lansky's true arena was gambling. From underground casinos in New York to racetracks in Florida, he turned games of chance into rivers of money. He forged alliances with Cuba, its dictator Fulgencio Batista, building lavish casinos in Havana where the mob laundered fortunes and entertained America's elite. Tourists poured in, celebrities dazzled under chandeliers, and behind the glamour, Lansky kept meticulous ledgers, ensuring every dollar found its place. It was said that he could move money across borders with the precision of a banker, yet leave no trace for the law. Lansky's reach extended far beyond dice and cards. During World War II, in an unlikely twist, he and Luciano struck deals with the US government, naval intelligence, desperate to protect the docks of New York from sabotage and maintain order in Italy, turned to the mob. Lansky became a quiet patriot, arranging cooperation between criminals and military officials. It was a strange alliance, but one that showed the depth of his influence, where even governments found use for his networks. Yet, behind the wealth and power, Lansky was haunted by the precariousness of his identity. As a Jew in a world dominated by Italian bosses, He walked a fine line of loyalty and caution. He admired Zionist movements and even supported the creation of Israel, believing one day it could serve as a safe haven. In 1970, when law enforcement pressure mounted, Lansky fled to Israel seeking refuge under the law of return. But the dream turned bitter. Israel, under US pressure, denied him permanent citizenship. The mob's accountant was sent back to face American courts. The trials came, but the evidence was always elusive. Lansky was a master at keeping himself distant from the crimes. He left little on paper, and witnesses spoke of him in whispers. He was too smart to get caught, one FBI agent admitted. And so, despite decades of investigation, Lansky never spent more than a few months in prison. By the time of his death in 1983, he was said to be nearly broke, though many believed fortunes were hidden away in Swiss banks or Caribbean vaults. His financial empire had melted into legend. In the aftermath of his passing, the myth of Meyer Lansky only grew. To some, he was the cold, calculating hand that made organized crime unstoppable. To others, he was a brilliant strategist who brought order to chaos. A man who turned gangsters into businessmen and gambling into an industry. His influence is still felt in Las Vegas, where casinos run on systems he perfected, and in the very structure of organized crime worldwide. Lansky's story is not simply that of a gangster, but of an immigrant who used intellect instead of violence, who built systems instead of empires of blood. His legacy lies in the transformation of crime itself, from back-alley fights to boardroom meetings, from rackets to corporations. He was, in every sense, the mastermind behind the mob. Today, his life continues to echo in popular culture, from films like Bugsy and The Godfather, Part 2, to television dramas that draw upon his shadowy presence. He is remembered as both villain and visionary, a man who could never entirely escape the duality of his life. A businessman, a patriot, a criminal, and above all, a strategist whose story reveals the hidden architecture of American power. This has been a journey into the world of Meyer Lansky, the boy from the Lower East Side who rewrote the rules of organized crime. His empire may have faded, but his methods endure, shaping the way the underworld, and at times even the overworld, still operates. And as we close this chapter, remember that history is not only written by kings and presidents, but also by the unseen minds who moved in silence, leaving legacies in ledgers, not on thrones. If you value stories like this, where the shadows of history are brought into the light, supporting this work ensures that the past, in all its hidden dimensions, continues to be told.